Hello friends, today we will be talking about Convention on Biological Diversity CBD. This is an international agreement to protect and conserve the biological diversity existing on this planet. During 1970s and 1980s, the awareness of biodiversity loss rose dramatically amongst policymakers and the public, initiated by the 1972 Stockholm Conference on the Environment. There was a time when United Nations Conference on Human Environment took place. There were many incidents related to the environment taking place. The famous book by Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, came, and there were many issues related to environment, related to biodiversity, related to pollution. All these things were coming up. And then it was realized that biodiversity loss is a loss to mankind. It was also realized that protection of biodiversity is of utmost importance for the survival of human beings on this planet. Preceding this, CBD was formed, and CBD is a global agreement addressing all aspects of biological diversity, genetic, species and ecosystems. It is a very flexible agreement in the sense that it does not compel any government to take mandatory actions. It stresses more on sustainable development. The idea of sustainable development came from 1987 Brundtland Commission, which said that development which fulfill the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs is sustainable development. So, Convention on Biological Diversity not just talks about diversity of plants, animals and microbes only, but it also takes due consideration that how biological diversity affects other facets of development, how the other things are interconnected. For example, agriculture, education, business, politics, all these things are linked to each other. Therefore, the CBD was a pioneer agreement in terms of sustainable development, which paved the way for an interconventions thinking, for a multidisciplinary approach where the need of protection of biological health was looked for the development perspectives. It was not just the protection of the environment and ambient conditions, but it was felt that even the smallest creatures existing on the planet are useful, they help in the ecological balance, and ultimately food security, the other needs of human beings are in one way or the another connected with each other. And all these aspects are guaranteed by the conservation of biological diversity. The convention was negotiated under the auspices of United Nations Environment Programme. It was framed under the guidance of United Nations, and when it came, more than 150 countries signed the agreement. This is the timeline of how the work started being. In November 1988, by UN, an ad hoc working group of experts on biodiversity conservation was formed. Now, this group was looking into the need of any other kind of organization, whether it is needed on an international level, to look for the biodiversity issues. In May 1989, another group called Ad hoc Working Group of Technical and Legal Experts was framed, which looked into the varying needs of developed and the developing countries. It was found and it was decided to have some kind of sharing of benefits, etc., how it can be considered for biological diversity agreement if at all it's going to come. And this group in February 1991 was called Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee. The things were proceeding in a positive manner, and where in May 1992, the text of the convention was complete. There was a Nairobi conference related to the environment issues, and with this, on 22nd May, the text of the convention was finalized. Further, in June 1992, the convention was opened for signature at the Rio Summit. This is the Earth Summit, which was again a landmark event in the field of environment and biodiversity related issues. The convention was kept open till 4th June 1993, and at that time more than 150 countries signed the convention. Finally, on 29th December 1993, the convention came into force. It was after 90 days and 30th ratification, and 168 member countries had signed the convention by them. That is, they agreed to follow in principle the regulations which were given, and everyone was quite participating in terms and worried in terms of conservation of biodiversity was thought to be an utmost importance and the burning issue at that time. At present, the convention is most widely ratified international treaties on environmental issues with 196 member countries. It does not lay any kind of mandatory regulations to be followed by each country, but rather it gives a kind of a flexibility in its approach where every country with its own set of principles and directions can form action plans suited to around needs which are particular pertinent for a particular country. The objectives of CBD are broadly categorized as: number 1 is conservation of biological diversity, the sustainable use of the components of biological diversity, the fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the utilization of genetic resources. The first and the second objective particularly talk about the intergenerational equity. For example, whatever the resources we are using at present, they should not be compensated for future generations. It talks about the ever availability of this biological diversity. Whereas the third objective talks about the producers and users of this biological wealth. The biodiversity rich countries are utilized by the so-called developed countries, and most of the time the benefits are devoid. So it talks about the equitable sharing of benefits, whether it is a genetic resource, whether it is a species resource or an ecosystem resources, whatever we are using, it has to be equal sharing of the benefits. The convention has convention bodies which provide a legal framework for the protection of biodiversity. Most important one is Conference of the Parties. The Conference of the Parties is the governing body of the convention and advances implementation of the convention through the decisions it takes at its periodic meetings. The functions of the parties are allocating the budget, reviewing the reports that are coming, and time to time the meetings are held, and in these meetings the progress of the conservation measures taken up in the different countries is viewed. Meetings of COP are held every 2 years. Initially from 1994 to 1996 they were held annually, but in 2000 it was decided to have it once in 2 years, and these are open to all the parties to the convention as well as to the observers from non-parties. The intergovernmental organizations are there, and non-governmental organizations are also present in the proceedings which are taking place. The first meeting of the convention took place in November and December 1994 in Nassau, Bahamas. The 13th ordinary meeting of the parties to the convention will take place in December 2016 in Cancun, Mexico. India hosted the 11th ordinary meeting at Hyderabad in 2012. The subsidiary body on scientific, technological and technical advice is another body whose function is to assist the conference of parties with related to any technical or technological advice. It is an open-ended intergovernmental scientific advisory body to provide the COP with advice and recommendations on scientific, technological and technical aspects of the implementation of the convention. It consists of members from government, from scientific bodies, even the observers from the non-party organizations are there, and they provide with respect to the implementation aspects, with respect to policy formation, they are basically giving the scientific advice to COP. These are other subsidiary bodies which have a limited mandate and which are there for a limited duration of time, serving specific objectives. This is the Working Group on Access and Benefit Sharing. It is currently the forum for negotiating an international regime on access and benefit sharing. Benefit arising out of the usage of biological wealth. The Working Group on Article 8J, it addresses the issues related to protection of traditional knowledge. The traditional knowledge which is there among the rural people, which is dying because of urbanization, modernization and loss of forest. And this group therefore addresses the issues which are related to the protection of traditional knowledge. The Working Group on Protected Areas, it is guiding and monitoring implementation of the program of work on protected areas. The protected areas are national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, the working on them, the specific species conservation whichever is taking place in those places, what are the guiding mechanisms, how these things are monitored, how the progress is viewed, what are the rules and regulations coming with respect to species specific conservation measures. All this is taken care by the working group. The Working Group on the review of implementation of the convention, how the policies and the task forces which have been given, how the implementation part is taking place. So this examines the implementation of the convention, including national biodiversity strategies and action plans which are country specific, which are formed by individual governments. Open-ended ad hoc intergovernmental committee for the Nagoya Protocol on OBS. This was established as an interim governing body for the Nagoya Protocol until the first meeting of the parties to the protocol, at which time it will cease to exist. Now there are convention protocols. The important ones, the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety and Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing. The Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety of the Convention is also known as Biosafety Protocol, and it was adopted in January 2000. Every plant, animal and microorganism has a genetic makeup. These are the genetic resources. Now we are using these genetic resources, but it has to be taken care that while forming any medicine or their usage in agriculture or cosmetics or in industry, wherever we are using these genetic resources, they should not be harmful to the environment and particularly to human health. So this protocol takes care and forms guidelines with respect to the usage of genetic resources in different areas. This was adopted in January 2000 but became operational in 2003. The Biosafety Protocol, as it is said, seeks to protect biological diversity from the potential risk posed by living modified organisms resulting from modern biotechnology. Now there are living modified organisms called LMOs and there are genetic modified organisms called GMOs. There is a sharp distinction between them. When it is a genetic modified organisms, it can be living or dead. We are injecting the genes of one organism into another, the basic characteristics of the organism changes, which may be beneficial for a particular sector, but in turn it may have lot many socio-economic and environmental consequences. So the protocol lays down guidelines and rules with respect to how and in what manner this can be prevented, the biological diversity can be prevented from these are the maths and aftermaths of biotechnology, what we can say. For example, we have seen the cases of BT cotton, BT brinjal, where the farmers have committed suicide at several places. This because these type of innovations, whatever we do, they do not come single-handedly, they come out with lot many consequences on environment and all those socio-economic factors which are related, that must also be considered. Another one is Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing. When any individual or any institution approaches any country and seeks the genetic resources from there, it has to be equal benefit sharing. This was adopted by the Conference of the Parties to the Convention of Biological Diversity at its 10th meeting on 29th October 2010 in Nagoya, Japan. The protocol is an international agreement which aims at sharing the benefits arising from the utilization of genetic resources in a fair and equitable way. This has also been seen in the case of traditional knowledge, where the people are having medicinal values of different herbs, shrubs, grasses are there. The multinational companies, they take away the resources, and in turn the communities themselves are not benefited, and the exploitation of those species occurs continuously. So, this protocol came into operation in 2014, and it talks about the utilization of genetic resources in a better and equitable manner. This is biological diversity strategist plan, because HE targets are there. The convention itself sees how does it implement the plans which are there. So, in October 2010, at the 10th conference of the parties to the CBD in Nagoya, Japan, the parties adopted a strategic plan for biodiversity 2011-20 along with 20 HE targets, because these targets are very specific and they govern and how the implementation of the objectives of the convention will be taking place. Now, these are 5 targets and 20 objectives are given. Goal number 1, address the underlying causes of biodiversity loss by mainstreaming biodiversity across government and societies. The need is to include the biodiversity issues in government policies and other aspects of the social life. So, this addresses what are the causes of biodiversity with respect to not just cutting of the trees and formation of the dams and things like that, but even in the societal makeup, the type of living we are living, the type of food we are consuming, all these things having a say, have an effect on the biodiversity. Strategic goal B, reduce the direct pressure on biodiversity and promote sustainable use. As it has been said, the direct pressures, they should be curtailed. Efforts should be made for the sustainable use of the biodiversity. Basically, it has been seen that there are 2 views. One is the preservation of the biodiversity, whether we have to go for preservation, conservation, or whether we have to go for utilization of biodiversity. So, if it is utilization of the biodiversity, it has to be in a sustainable manner. Strategic goal C, to improve the status of biodiversity by safeguarding ecosystem, species and genetic diversity. The habitats have to be protected. Species conservation takes place only when the ambient flora, the entire habitat is conserved, particularly the forest, the grasslands, the marine ecosystems are considered. They have to be free from pollution. Strategic goal D, enhance the benefits to all from biodiversity and ecosystem services. Whatever the benefits, whether it is a direct benefit or indirect benefit, whatsoever we are using, we have to enhance the benefits in turn that biodiversity, various aspects are there, not only ecological but the economic aspect of biodiversity is also there. Similarly, economic valuation of ecosystem services is also being carried out at several places. So, this goal looks into the biodiversity and the interconnections between ecology and economics, and that was the ultimate objective of the convention in the beginning, that it wanted to have a sustainable use, and it talked about broadly the sustainable development. The strategic goal E is enhance implementation through participatory planning, knowledge management and capacity building. The implementation part is equally important. In forest conservation, there is social forestry coming up. The need is to promote joint forest management, knowledge management, awareness, education, participatory role of local communities. It also becomes utmost importance. Capacity building, empowerment of women, empowerment of the marginalized sections of the people. That is because they are the ones who are the main custodians of the biological wealth. They are the ones who live amongst the biological wealth, biological resources. So, unless and until they are not capable enough to take care of the surroundings, all the efforts made at the international level will fail, because every biodiversity resource has got a global and a local value. If it is a global value, it will be important for international purposes, but if it is a local value, it has a significance to the people who are living there. the medicines, the food, the other things which they are getting from the animals, the pest control is also done by so many types of species which are there. So, it requires an overall a participatory planning, in the sense that each section of the society and each part of the country should come forward to take the objectives of the convention further and bring about a change and achieve the target of biodiversity conservation. It is by the direction of the convention that every country should have a national action plan, and the convention is calling this to guarantee that the objectives of the convention are undertaken at all levels and in all the sectors in each country. There are specific requirements and specific guidelines in every country. The issues, whether it is an island, whether it is a mountainous country, the issues and the things and the species threatened will be different. So, this convention calls that every nation should take up the action plans and work in order to protect the biodiversity, along with framing its own laws, own governance mechanisms, and involve at all the levels, right from the policy makers, planners, to the lower level who are the main functionaries, the grassroots level where actually the communities are working. All these part of the society, everything has to be included so as to arrive at the level which satisfies the objectives of the convention in a more better manner. And this is all in today's lecture.